In the last 5 years, there's over $3 million that have been absorbed by the religious institutions and dioceses just to deal with the issue of student loan debt. $3 million, that's a lot of money.
Religious institutions and dioceses are spending big dollars to help pay off the student loan debts of their priests and religious. That's according to a new first-of-its-kind report exclusively reported by EWTN News. The Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University, or CARA, conducted the survey, which was commissioned by the Labouré Society. It surveyed religious institutions and Catholic dioceses across the U.S. to find out the impact of educational debt on religious and priestly vocations. That impact is profound. I'm Catherine Hadro. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. Institutes report they are sometimes forced to turn away serious inquiries or ask those interested to delay their application due to educational debt, a serious issue considering the dwindling number of priests in America. As Montse Alvarado reports, many seeking a vocation are turning to the Labouré Society for help to pay their debt and follow their spiritual calling.
I can tell you the moment that I knew I was going to be a priest. So I was serving Mass here in 4th grade or 5th grade, wherever I was. And we knelt at the side of the altar for the Eucharistic prayer. And at the moment the priest elevated the Blessed Sacrament, I just had this strong feeling, that's going to be me one day.
During my 3rd year of medical school, I had a couple of life-changing encounters with Jesus in the Adoration Chapel, in which I heard him loud and clear calling me to become a priest.
Called to the priesthood. The journey can be difficult in today's secular society, but one of the greatest roadblocks many face.
I had student loan debt.
I have all this debt.
Some dioceses that have a financial limit for debt allow priests to pay off debts with their stipend. The more fiscally challenged the diocese, the lower the debt threshold amount and the lower the stipend. But most dioceses won't take on a candidate for the seminary if they have significant financial debt. That means that men seeking to become priests are forced to wait for years.
So for me, probably around 10 years from now, because I haven't been able to join the seminary yet. I'm conditionally accepted by the Archdiocese of Denver, so I need to mitigate my student loan debt before I can enter the seminary.
And it's not just priests.
I'm seeking to join the Servants of the Lord in the Virgin of Mata, probably like 7 to 9 years from now, God willing, on the process.
All religious institutions per canon law require a candidate to be debt-free before they can move forward with formation. Jake Smith, who hopes to become a priest, and Marie Arnold, seeking to take religious vows, aren't alone. According to the CARA report of the 275 religious institutions and 83 diocesan vocation directors who responded and took part in the survey, some 80% of dioceses have applicants with student loan debt, as well as 70% of religious institutions. Only 10% of those religious institutions have the ability to absorb the debt, so aspirants can enter formation. In hopes of cutting down that wait time, Smith and Arnold are now working with the Labouré Society to learn how to pay off their loans.
We deal with individuals that have over $100,000 or more.
John Flanagan, the executive director of the Labouré Society, explains the program brings together about 20 to 25 aspirants who work together as a class over a period of 6 months. They collectively raise funds for a common pool. At the end of each class, all the funds raised are awarded out on a merit basis, helping the entire class reach their goal.
We've helped over 400 enter into formation.
During the process, aspirants reach out to friends, family, associates, and strangers to share their vocation story and ask for them to become benefactors to help mitigate their debt.
So that very first ask, I was really nervous.
The interaction isn't easy, especially for those who are called to serve, to ask for financial help.
It was definitely nerve-wracking, but with the Labouré Society, we get a lot of practice in how to do it.
But it's more than simply asking for money. They also ask for prayers. They learn about a benefactor's story, form relationships with them, pray for them, and learn the art of gratitude. These relationships can become lifelong. Throughout the 6 months, aspirants are paired with an accountability partner to journey alongside them.
Accountability partners are they are a gift during this process. She's like another rock that is like helping me and supporting me along this way and along this journey. And
we talk once a week, and during these weekly meetings, we talk about how things have been going, the highs and the lows of fundraising. If I'm running into some kind of an obstacle, he's a really good sounding board, and he's really knowledgeable and experienced.
An accountability partner can be a layperson who has some expertise in business or finance. It can also be an alumni of the program who has walked in their shoes. Father Scott Barkey, ordained a little more than 2 years ago, is a graduate of Labouré.
I took 5 classes, 5 6-month classes, so 2.5 years.
Now as an alumni, he assists in being an accountability partner.
I experience those ups and downs, and so when they're up, I can encourage them and keep them going. When they're down, and they certainly need encouragement at that point, right?
The skills he says he learned are lifelong.
As a parish priest, your air conditioning is going to break or your roof is going to leak and you need to fix it. Whether you want to or not, you're going to have to raise money, and whether you like it or not, you're going to have to be able to raise money.
The fruits of the program, however, are so much more than financial stewardship.
As I believe so strongly that it was a very, very important part of my formation as a priest.
Board members tell us that the process helps aspirants in their discernment and leads to a higher retention rate of finishing a vocation.
So between 7 and 8 out of 10 stay the course. They go on to final vows or ordination or are currently in process thereof. The typical seminary retention rate is about 50%. So there is something about doing this process that deepens the discernment.
A young man or woman, or a man or woman who has disciplined themselves, devoted themselves to the Labouré process, is typically a healthier, more mature, holier vocation.
At the end of the day, these aspirants aren't pursuing their vocation for themselves, but for the sake of the church.
As time has gone on, I'm really starting to realize that God pays for what he orders. The money is out there, and I am going to be able to enter formation as soon as God wants me to.
Montse Alvarado, EWTN News In Depth.
Now for more discussion and analysis of the report and the impact of student debt on vocations, we are joined by the Labouré Society's Executive Director, John Flanagan, and Labouré board member and alumna, Sister Josephine Garrett. Thank you both for being here, and thank you both for your work. John, I want to go to you first. What was the greatest key insight you gained from this CARIS study? I mean, what is the impact of educational debt on vocations to religious life in the priesthood?
That the debt issue is not going away, and it's growing. 70% of religious institutions are currently facing this issue, 80% of dioceses. And the dollar amounts that we see as an institution continue to rise for the elements that we're helping. The average debt that the Labouré aspirant is being able to mitigate through Labouré is now north of $100,000, well over the national average.
Sister Josephine, you serve on the board of the Labouré Society, but as I mentioned, you are also an alumna who has benefited from it. Do you mind sharing how much of an impediment was your student debt to you fully embracing your vocation as a religious sister, and how did you overcome that?
When you ask that question, I think of the physical impediment, like the dollar amount, and I also think of the spiritual impediment too, the various things that could come up. It was interesting for me because I had a good job, and when I entered community, I didn't leave that job right away, and so I thought I would use the surplus income from not having bills, living in the convent, and still working to pay off that balance I had left, which was about $40,000. But my community, they really taught me humility. They were like, or you could go and see about this resource, Labouré. And so the physical impediment, it was about $40,000, but there were so many other spiritual impediments that came with that Labouré was able to enter into as well. Being, yes, a solution for mitigating student loan debt, but also in so many more ways, a solution to contribute to the formation of future priests and religious.
I can only imagine the anxiety that comes with that debt during that part of your journey. John, something I'm interested in asking is, does a woman with debt entering into religious life face more roadblocks than a man with debt who's becoming a diocesan priest, for example? How does that experience typically compare overall between religious sisters and our priests?
Well, diocesan priests typically get a stipend, so there's often a threshold of debt allowed for them to move forward. But for those seeking to enter religious life as a female, there's not typically any kind of stipend. So it's a much larger roadblock. In fact, it can be just a brick wall. But the fun side of it is some of those that have gone through our program, the most successful have been even those who wanted to join a cloister, where you may think of them as being introverted. They're not going to let anything stop them from being able to answer God's call. So it's a wonderful way to watch them excel.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of being introverted versus extroverted, Sister, the Labouré model is based on a multidimensional, relationship-based fundraising model for people pursuing vocation. So this might be the first time that these men and women are having to fundraise for themselves. Can you speak about that aspect of this? Because I imagine that might be uncomfortable for some at first.
It's absolutely uncomfortable, but look, we know that, saints aren't made in comfort, and vocations shouldn't be formed in comfort either. So what we're all called to is not about comfort. And so, John, as I was listening to what John just said about the difference between introverts and extroverts, and yes, this is a challenge for both extroverts and introverts to go out and ask for help, to fundraise, which is an area where we often have a lot of bias. But I think it's actually life-giving to introverts, because these are not surface level conversations. They're not small talk. What participants in the Labouré ministry find themselves in are conversations about the things that matter most to us. So when we go to fundraise, we don't just ask for money, we share our story. We share what God is doing in our lives, what we have seen, what we have heard, what we have looked upon, what we have touched. And then we invite the person that we're sitting with, who we are asking for financial support, to share their story with us. And I think those are conversations that introverts tend to be most interested in, which is why I think is one of the reasons we see so much success, even from future women who are called to the cloister, because what they're finding themselves in are the most life-giving conversations for a person, whether you're introverted or extroverted. So this is a relationship-based approach to ministry. It's not just about fundraising, it's about building the kingdom, allowing people to give witness to what God is doing in their life, whether they're called to religious life or not. It's about sharing stories. And it's beautiful to see that people who thought they couldn't do it absolutely can do it when it's for something like the gospel.
That's such a great insight, because it's so vulnerable, but again, about the most important thing. John, does the reality of student debt that we're discussing, does it disproportionately affect our church's ability to welcome in religious who come from lower levels of income? And are we missing out on priests and religious who come from marginalized communities because of this?
I have to think yes. When you start to look at the data from the study, those that are the mission dioceses, those that need external support to just do their daily bread, those dioceses tend to have a threshold that is much higher for be able to accept candidates come in. So they're allowing people with $50,000, $60,000 moving forward. That's hard to do on a $15,000 annual stipend. So you have individuals where they have less money, so they allow more in or try to absorb more of it as a religious institution. They can't. I mean, one study showed that 60% of religious communities don't have their retirement funded. Is it a question of robbing Peter to pay Paul, caring for those you have, or allowing somebody new to come in? So yes, it does make an impact.
On a practical note then, Sister Josephine, what's your advice to a young person who feels a potential calling to religious life and is wary of entering into higher education for this exact fear of procuring debt? Should someone avoid taking on student loans or going to college if they're discerning a possibility of a vocation to religious life?
I wouldn't say to avoid going to college. I wouldn't say that. I would say to be mindful in your discernment. If you're already aware of a possible call before entering to college, to just be mindful and discerning and a good steward regarding acquiring student loan debt. But I wouldn't say to people, don't go educate yourselves, because, and John can speak to it, we do have a model that we're going to be rolling out that looks at dioceses' efforts to educate their seminarians and getting ahead of that and helping to fundraise for that. So I wouldn't say don't be educated. I wouldn't say don't educate yourself, but be mindful about acquiring debt. Be discerning about acquiring debt, which is something we should always do. But I also want to speak to folks who may come from marginalized backgrounds or lower income settings, and just speak to some of the mindset that can be in place when that's our experience and our background. I think one of the things that we have to work on in marginalized communities is helping to foster hope. I think sometimes what we see for ourselves as possible when we come from those communities is not as much as is actually possible. And so I do want to encourage folks who are coming from marginalized or lower income communities and then maybe taking on more debt because that's your circumstance, that this is all God's money. And if God has called you, he has in store for you a solution to the money problem. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been illuminating. John, Sister Josephine, thank you both for this discussion.
Thank you, Catherine.